If you'd like to participate in the discussion or leave us feedback, you can contact us at levelupyourgamingpodcast@gmail.com or find us on Facebook at facebook.com/levelupyourgaming. If you like the content and want to hear more of the show, subscribing will ensure you don't miss an episode. New episodes come out almost every Wednesday. Also, please review, tell a friend about the podcast, or share with your gaming group. Now sit back and enjoy the episode. Welcome into the Level Up Gaming Podcast. My name is Aaron, and joining me once again, I have Josh. Josh, how you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. Just got back from a 13 days, 10 days vacation, travel through the Southwest.
Yeah, you were all over the place. Saw the pictures from the Grand Canyon and stuff. It looked beautiful.
Yeah. Well, more than that, we went through the Southern California desert. I went from the Colorado desert into the Mojave Desert, which the Joshua Tree crosses both of them. What's really interesting is that you can look at the Colorado desert and you can walk maybe half a mile, and it's a completely different desert. It's completely transformed. It's a whole change of atmosphere. It's very cool.
Interesting. I feel like you're trying to segue us into our topipic here.
No, I want to talk about deserts, man. I don't want to talk about transformation
we're
and change.
About the arid nature of deserts. No, today we're going to end up talking about how to write a character development arc. But before we do, I want to call out, we got an email from Homie and the Dude, homieandthedude.com. They are a tabletop RPG publisher, and they are trying to sort of change the landscape of tabletop RPG publishing. So they just published a book called Scorched Basin, and their whole model is sort of Kickstarters based on what the fans want. So, go ahead and take a look at them, homieandthedude.com. They do things a little bit different than the large, publishers out there. They're trying to get more things out in a quicker time span than the standard project. So again, take a look at them, see if any of the Kickstarters appeal to you. homieandthedude.com. Anyways,
they're trying to take it from an arid landscape where only the barest of supplies grow to something more fertile, that things spring up quicker.
Exactly. It's like a brand new character arc. And so really what I was thinking of here was, I was thinking about this in regards to, let's say you start a one-shot campaign. So you just had characters roll up, quick characters, probably just sets of powers, loose, no backstory, if any. And you don't really have that session 0 here. So like, how do you form a good character arc there? Well, obviously with the session 0, it's much easier to do, but with no session 0, how do you develop a character arc? How do you develop like meaningful, story and history for that character? And so that's sort of what I was thinking of when I brought this up. And how do you do that, and how do you make it so it doesn't feel forced within your narrative?
Yeah. Well, you think about character arcs, and you think about their transformation, right? They're a change of where the character was to where the character wants to be, or needs to be, not necessarily wants. And it is a change that is brought about by the circumstances that they are thrust into and the choices that they make from it, right? So if you have these pre-gen characters, you need to, if you're planning on having character arcs, or you don't even need to plan character arcs for this, but if you want to have interesting characters are not Mary Sue's. They're not, perfect, no issues, has already solved all their problems in the past, and they are a shining beacon for all heroes everywhere. A good character, whether it's a throwaway character or it's a long standing character with great legs for adventures, should have some flaws. And I don't necessarily mean like, they got a problem, a physical disability or something like that. A flaw is something that maybe they don't like about themselves or that others around them don't like about them. It could be a personality issue. It could be something in their history that's caused a problem. Backstory is a great way to have these sort of flaws. You can have internal issues. These are things that they don't like about themselves they want to change. Or you can have external issues, backstory, something that has happened to them that they want to change. And even if you're doing a one shot, you can still include that sort of information in it if you're making these characters because it makes them more interesting even in the short term.
Yeah, I mean, I think that makes a lot of sense in terms of the fact that you can, just because it is a one shot, just because you gave out disposable characters or maybe your players made disposable characters doesn't mean that they can't add flourish to those characters that allows them to have more personality that you can sort of develop on. Now, what's interesting is typically when you do like a session 0, you have time to plan this sort of stuff. A lot of times you can figure out how these character arcs are going to intersect with one another and or make them flesh out in the same direction. So they sort of all happen parallel to one another or within the same sort of time frame as one another. What's very interesting is, so we brought Ken into our current game that we're running on Saturday nights. And so we've been playing our characters for years. So there's a lot of like history and backstory behind all those characters. Years, I don't remember, maybe a year, 2 years, whatever it is. And Ken's character is a fresh face coming into all of that. So his character is theoretically behind in terms of the arcs, but you want to see him arc into places, or I guess maybe I don't know enough about his character at this point, but as a GM who's going to be storytelling for his character, I want to be able to give him tidbits and opportunities to be able to explore stuff with his character and see which way he wants to end up going. So it's interesting because he's almost like this exact situation, which is he's been thrust into an area we don't know very much about him at all as the GMs.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he wants to have an arc. I think that's an important part of doing any sort of character arc here, of any sort of growth or transformation, is that the player, the character needs to have flaws or backstory or opinions or something that needs to change in them, how they are, how they behave, how they interact with the world. But more than that, it's up to the player to make those choices for the character. So the player really needs to be on board with, hey, you're going to have a character arc here. You're going to, do something. And once you get to that point, then, you sort of need to know how you're going to do it. And I was thinking about this. In a lot of the stories that I've read and the stories that I've run, not as many of the stories I've played in. I don't know. I don't end up playing in long stories. I tell long stories. I like to start with challenging the character, finding that flaw or that backstory, and this is going to be your character arc, and I'm going to start it out now by presenting you with your flaw, with your issue, but in a mild way, so that you can react to it in the way that you have preset your character to react to it, to sort of like level set, hey, this is baseline for this issue. All right?
Okay.
You don't want to make it too big. You don't want to make the stakes too high. You want to be very close to what they've already presented as their character's issue. If you make it too big, you make the stakes too high, or what, like the issue I've run into in the past is that the player over overwrites the character's backstory with their own personal, like, I'm a hero, I can do this, and nullifies, any sort of character growth. You just go from 0 to hero immediately, and there goes your character arc. There's no like transformation, there's no growth. Your player is just perfect because people like being the hero.
That's very interesting that you point that out, which is that obviously, there's a player behind the character, so they have, they have tendencies to move in certain directions. You typically, if you KYP is it's not KYC, it's KYP. Know the player, okay? Because the player is going to do something that the player finds interesting in terms of the tropes. Even if there's a character behind you, if they're a really great role player and they sit in the character and they try to embody that character still tends to have goals that are similar to that player's wishes and desires. Mm-hmm. And that's you need to make sure that it aligns and that you're kind of aware of, like, okay, if I give that monumental task to Bob's gonna run. Okay, he's gonna take it no matter what. He'll do it at level 1. He's gonna try to fight the dragon. Okay, or if you have a martyr on your team, okay, you present a situation where a sacrifice is sort of necessary, or becoming that sacrifice is necessary. They're gonna do it right away. They're gonna jump into it when they're totally unprepared. There's no way out of any situation. They're gonna sacrifice themselves for the team. And that's the player.
I think that's important that you say no way out, because one of the things that I wrote down when I was writing this is that, this has to be, you're confronting them with their fear, you're confronting them with their flaw, their backstory, whatever it is. You want it not to be too high stakes, but also there needs to be a way for the character or the player, possibly both, to fail out of it in a way that seems natural. Okay. Because this is like you're presenting them with, hey, we're going to start your backstory. We're going to start your arc, your transformation. And if you're presenting them with the issue that they have, at first they should fail. They shouldn't succeed that first thing, because you need to level set, like, hey, this is where problems are. And if that's having other people come in to save them, or they're not able to complete the task because they're too late, or it's something has happened, they're unable to prevent the thing from happening, or they see it happening across a courtyard or on the other side of a ravine, or they're trapped behind some grates, whatever it is, where they cannot interact and witness the thing happening. I think it's important that the character has that way out, that they couldn't do the thing, that it's it's beyond their grasp, beyond their ability to do it, and this is the basis for the emotions and the consequences that is going to move this story arc, right?
Mm-hmm. No, again, you're absolutely right that you want to be. This is sort of like the key to all storytelling is to manage the expectations of the outcome of any encounter. Okay, so that you're trying to balance anything that a player does to be like, okay, this is going to. They're not going to go so far as though they're not going to like flatten this part of the story or this part of the character arc. And they're going to, you find that just right sweet spot is really, really a very delicate thing. But even in this sort of situation here, if it's too easy and they overcome, you're messed up. Like you've already lost all ability for them to overcome. So what are you going to do? You can't redo the same thing again.
Yeah, because they've already overcome their flaw.
They've already overcome the flaw. So you need to make sure that the flaw is challenging to overcome. And oftentimes I say it's much easier to subtract than it is to add. I think that's usually the adage. Usually it's better to be over corrective in the harsh way than it is to be like under corrective in the harsh way. Like if you think about this in terms of like game design, if something is too easy and then you try to make it harder, players often revolt.
Yeah.
Okay. But if something is hard and then it becomes easier, it's a lot easier it's a lot harder for players to detect why something became easier because it was already really hard. So did they get more? Did they get stronger? Did they get smarter? Did they, come up with better plans? I don't know what it was, but maybe that's you just saying, well, I'm just gonna drop 10 hit points off of this thing. This thing suddenly has there's a lot of ways that you can manipulate that back end to balance better against your players if you're overcorrective in one direction. That's all I'm trying to say.
Yeah. Well, and also if encounters become easier as they go, if their choices become easier as they move in a direction, that can also feel like a reward. And that's, that's rewarding your players for going in the way that you want. And, you can have it hard, difficult right at the beginning and then ease it up. And it makes it a lot more.
It makes sense with the arc too, is that it's almost impossible for you to overcome at this stage here. It's the first time you've encountered it, but it becomes easier because of experience, because of, having to deal with the issue multiple times because of your character's growth.
Is it growth? Yeah. So that's the beginning, right? You talk about the arc, you're talking about the choices that they're making.
Yes.
And I think choices is the word that I want to use here, is that and very much, I love small choices to big choices. They can't overcome it now. It's too difficult. It's too big. So you find what that issue is and you present the player, the character, with choices that they can achieve. And it should be small to begin with and become bigger and bigger and bigger as sort of like that, you can't climb a mountain in one step, right?
Mm.
You have to take step after step after step, but each step you take brings you closer to completing that task. And that first step may be difficult to take, but it doesn't have to be a big one, right?
Yeah.
So the choices and challenges that you present your player with should start out smaller and become more, not more difficult, but bigger. I don't think they should become necessarily more difficult. I think that they just become bigger choices. The whole arc itself should maintain a level of difficulty, or even, roll into based off of the character's level or whatever you're doing in the game. But the choices that they're making should be should reflect the change that the character wants to go through or needs to go through. That it just like reaffirms the choices that they're making as they're going through the process.
Yeah, again, you can adjust difficulty along the way as you go. As long as that first time is not overcome, it gives you a good baseline for where your player is in terms of solving through their character arc, how they decide to deal with the situation you've presented within the arc. These are important things to learn in a first encounter so the arc can be well crafted for the player. Okay. Yeah. Otherwise it will just be, there's not a one size fits all. I can't give you the silver bullet that makes this happen. I wish I could. This is the Level Up Your Gaming podcast. Great. But if you have a silver bullet, let us know. Level Up Your Gaming podcast, because I don't think there is one. Again, you want to adjust the difficulty based on that first encounter, and like you said, I like the idea of things becoming bigger decisions as you go along, even if the difficulty remains the same. Okay, because obviously overcoming whatever you're trying to overcome, or trying to get through, or trying to get past, or whatever you're trying to do, trying to become more evil. I don't know what your arc is, but if whatever you're trying to accomplish, or trying to help that player character accomplish, it should come with greater stakes as the arc progresses. So you finally get to the penultimate of your arc, in which you overcome your challenge.
Mm-hmm. And I think that last bit is sort of a return to the beginning. That initial, we're starting a character arc now moment where they're presented with their flaw, their backstory, their issue, whatever it is. Bring that back as your conclusion to their arc, but like ramp it up to 11. Like make it full stakes, maximum emotional damage, right? We want lives on the line. We want hair in the wind, whatever it is. And it really needs to be based around the choices that they've made throughout the arc. It should be like a direct reflection of what they initially set out as, and it should give them the opportunity to like really showcase the growth that the characters had in whatever direction it seems to be. And you should definitely reward that growth. If they make the decisions that, overcome that flaw or that issue or that problem that they had, then they should get, visible reward, like an active reward in the game for doing so. I'm not necessarily, don't give them a bigger weapon or something like that, but like, yes, making the right decision makes the encounter easier, or makes brings more aid to your side, or whatever.
Yeah, there's a lot of really cool rewards that you can do in terms of like powers or different rule sets based on what you've accomplished. And I think that makes a lot of sense to give a very tangible reward there at the end. And it could just be a truckload of gold, but at that point your characters probably already have a ton of it. But you also, like, again, if you make it this far, you've given your players, you've given your character the player behind the character so many opportunities to overcome this thing, and they finally overcome it. As long as you've paced it correctly, again, this is, the curse is that your player could just roll 20s and you're screwed. But, hopefully your arc is not as simple as I must defeat my nemesis.
Yeah.
Okay? Because that could be overcome by a bunch of lucky rolls. Okay. And you don't necessarily want it to be overcome by a bunch of lucky rolls, but you don't want it to be that you just keep encountering this isn't like Pokemon. You keep encountering your nemesis and you keep defeating him, and or you move on. Like, it's not actually like a full blown encounter with him. It's if this is your nemesis, he does something to cause your character strife at every turn. Okay. And overcoming him requires an immense amount of like, capital and like investment from your character, like emotionally and physically and, monetarily, whatever it might be, to get to finding your nemesis and then felling them. Like it's not as simple as he just shows up and you have a duel with him every 5 minutes until you get there. You don't want that to be the arc, because that can be overcome very easily. But if you have it be something more multi-stage, a larger, grander thing where you actually have to hunt down this person, you're always one step behind him. Like, that's a much bigger thing. And then again, big reward there, big payoff at the end.
Yeah, if you're going to have a flaw or a backstory issue with a nemesis, why? What made them a nemesis? What makes them the villain in your story, or the hero to your villain, whatever it is?
You were
that
born on the planet Nemesis, and every person is
no,
born
that's
with a twin who is always your nemesis.
but like that's such a terrible. Whatever. It's fine. It's fine. I can work with it.
That's an example of a bad a bad.
I'll make something work here. Come on. And it's one of those things like
What made
motivation.
them your nemesis? What was
Yeah,
the
motivation.
the catalyst that actually created a nemesis for you? You can play out the same trope. Like, he destroyed your village and killed everybody and blah blah blah.
Yeah, but
Okay,
if it's a one-time thing, who cares? He's got to like continuously like that. He killed everybody. Yeah, it was an act of war. He's a bad guy. But then he retired off to a village and now he makes bread. And you're like, I'm gonna come and kill you, Baker.
a better example would be that he was somebody that you had a very close relationship with in your village, and over time he started to do things that were more nefarious and questionable, and you had to have these back and forth with him until finally you come to a culminating event where he kills your dog, and then you become John Wick. You have to go fight him. So
Well, and even if the guy does end up, he wasn't a war crime. It wasn't a war crime. He was following orders, and now he bakes bread because he can't stand things. The arc doesn't have to end with you killing the guy.
you must fell your nemesis. This is a nemesis.
It could be that you realize that he was a victim of as much circumstance as you were, and that this is a forgiveness arc, and this is like relieving of that pressure. That sort of growth is super nice to have. It may not give you as many XP, but
this is a nemesis arc, and I am a murder hobo. I am going to kill.
You're the game master. You can award XP for forgiving your enemies.
Negative XP. You go down 5 levels. That's
this isn't D&D first edition. Yeah. And I think that's it's important to remember that a character arc doesn't necessarily mean you have to kill everybody from start to finish. That your personal flaws or your backstory doesn't have to involve straight up genocide to get from point A to point B. And I think it's actually it's better
those are more lazy backstories. They're
yes.
Not good.
Yes. I'm not saying that combat shouldn't be involved in all of these stories, but like
you're going to have combat involved. Combat will make you a good arc. A good arc is going to have all 3 bits into it. It's going to have a little bit of mental, it's going to have a little bit of social, it's going to have a little bit of physical. Okay, going to be all 3.
I would almost say that social should be the biggest part of that. It shouldn't be like evenly split.
I didn't say you had to make the triforce of of character.
I'm saying that here, if you want growth as a character, it should be, there needs to be some emotional stakes, and yes, it can culminate in a combat or a social encounter, but the two of those things don't necessarily need to not exist together. We were talking about rewarding players for making the right choices at that final stage. If they one of the things that I really liked from like JRPGs was you ended with like certain big super emotional boss battles. Sometimes the characters could forfeit their turn to talk to the boss, and it debuffed the boss tremendously because they were like, hey, you were my friend, what are you doing? And they like lose all their armor or something because they're like, oh yeah, I was your friend. Whoa. That's how bosses sound in JRPGs. And that can be really rewarding too.
Voiceovers here.
Whoa, man. I'm the evil lord. Dude. No? Okay. Sorry, I was just out in California. You got to give me something here.
So I'm just trying to figure out what's going on here. My wife just turned on the host. doing stuff outside. I'm like, what is happening?
So, I think we've covered like how to make an arc, how we're supposed to reward players, what's required of characters in order for an arc to work. We went over just like it doesn't need to be a hero's journey. It doesn't need to be a villain story. It could be transformative. In writing, they say that there's 4 different sort of character arcs. There's a positive character arc, that's your hero's journey. That's growth. The character gets better, it overcomes something. Your negative character arc, the person gets worse. That's your villain story. Your transformational, where it's not necessarily better or worse, but their viewpoint changes. I think that's really interesting and can be very fun to work with, but it might be more difficult to put into a game because you need to shift the worldview, not just of the character, but kind of the player playing the character in regards to your game, which is super fun. And if you can pull it off, awesome. The one that I don't care for, but it is very important for a lot of stories, is the flat character arc. And that's where you're at right now, Aaron. Your characters in your game have already overcome a lot of the problems. So in this character arc for Ken, if you're planning one, you're going to have a flat character arc for a lot of the players with a transformative or a positive or a negative. I mean, who knows? I don't judge. For Ken's character. And the flat character arc is very much about, being that bulwark against change, or like we know what's right or we know what's wrong, and we're going to do what we're going to do because we're standing in opposition to the challenges rather than being changed by them. And while it's not as rewarding from a character standpoint for that, it's very useful when those characters are around to sort of highlight the change of the character that has changed. Okay. If everybody changes together, did anything really happen? Like, we're all different now. But like, if you can show the difference between the character that's changed and a character that hasn't, you can see just how far they've moved. You're nodding along. Give me a little.
That makes. I'm thinking about it. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. I still think that there's more room for all the other players to go, but that makes sense that if you have 4 players at any given time that somebody's going through an arc, other players are probably going through a different arc that could be flat alongside that player, because they might just not be. You might not be pursuing their goals and their challenges to overcome or change their flaws or who they are as a character. And again, or perhaps their arcs pale in comparison to somebody else's arc at the time. Somebody could be going through a more dynamic transformation or a more strong positive transformation. So another arc that could be transformational could appear flat in the long run of the other character.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think if you're going to have like long games that have multiple stories, games that have multiple things, doing arcs for individual players as opposed to like group arcs is really effective. It gives everybody their own chance to shine. As long as everybody sticks with it. It's really bad when you've got like a couple of players and you get through 3 of their arcs and the 4th player never gets it because the group disbands before the game finishes. But but like it does allow you to showcase just how far each of those characters has come, what changes they've gone through, and really delve into the issues that they presented with the character. I think if you've got sort of those mid-level games, those games that are like 1 or 2 months, you can probably get like a whole group of players to have an arc, as long as, like you said, you get your session 0, you plan to sort of like have everybody. I'll see where all these people go, and they're all going to go sort of in the same direction. We're going to present them with the same sort of issues, same sort of choices, and they're going to transform together. I think you can even have a little bit of arc, or at least the start of an arc, in one shots. You're not going to transform a character. You're not going to have massive growth, but if you do your flavor text at the beginning and gives this person is scaredy cat, and by the end of it they've taken their first steps into fighting back, and it can just be like that first step sort of thing, and that gives you the basis for a character arc if they want to continue. Like, look at this, I enjoyed overcoming some of my flaws. Okay, you didn't, you barely took a step towards thinking that you had flaws, but that's okay.
Yeah, again, one shots can be very. Again, there's nothing wrong with the one shot. They can be very strong stories, but you can't overcome.
No,
a major flaw within a one shot story. It's a multiple session thing that requires multiple times encountering similar situations or striving to become better. It's just that, like you said, it's the first step in a journey. So like the one shot allows you to say, okay, I'm going to, perhaps that works better if you had made, more complex characters. You let your players make characters for the one shot. It allows you to do something within that story at that time. Yeah, it's a very different. It's a different approach to.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think even if you're making, throwaways or like pre-gens, that it's more interesting to have a character that has a reason to be going on this adventure, or to be, investigating this murder, or to be delving into this forgotten tomb, whatever it is. And those sort of issues, those sort of reasons are, because they're broken in some way. And that makes more interesting characters. And if you make interesting characters, you can do interesting things with them.
Exactly. You can. Is that your final point, Josh? Do you have
It has to be, because
I
I can't come up with something better than that at this point.
All right. If you have any thoughts on character arts, or if you have one that you particularly liked, you want to share with us, let us know. levelupgamingpodcast@gmail.com or facebook.com/levelupgaming. Also, the podcast is on YouTube if that's your listening medium, so you can smash the like button there, subscribe there. Otherwise, subscribe to your favorite podcasting site, review it, recommend it to a friend, all those good things. And that'll wrap us up for the week. So for Josh, I'm Aaron. Have a good week, everyone.
Bye.